Welcome to the OFX podcast. I'm Dave Claxton, and along with me, as always, is Sergio's speedy sidekick, Bethany McChesney.
Yeah,
Bit of an inside joke, but he'll really like it.
you will.
We're not going to be too long because we got a great interview with Rylan Schadegg that we want to get a chance to hear. But we did want to quickly talk about CrossFit. So, and it's a little out of our normal, but I guess we want to talk about. So, Beth, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, so the CrossFit Open has started. The first workout was announced last Thursday, 23.1. The workout it's a 14-minute AMRAP, which was kind of funny to me because even to get through a single round is quite difficult. um, and I'll get it a little bit wrong probably, but 60 cals on the rower, and then you go into 50 toes to bar, 40 wall balls, 30 something, and then 20 ring muscle ups. So there's been a lot of controversy and frustrations with the workout. Typically, when I first saw it, my thought was, okay, this is not a typical open workout. Usually they make it, well, the slogan for the open is that it's good for everybody. And we would do often the open workouts at my gym. We're not a CrossFit gym, but we do them for fun. They typically included things that everybody would have at any gym. Usually things like with single dumbbells, boxes, skipping ropes, wall walks was in it last year. So things that everybody has these things, but putting ring muscle ups, I thought, in the first workout, and even wall balls. And I mean, rowing, it's fine, but again, not everybody is going to have everything. So, I was like, I don't know. I'm probably not going to do the open this year. I had heard actually going into this one that they were going to make it so that the open workouts were going to have to be more likely done at affiliates to get people back into the affiliates. I know last year and the year before with a lot of controversy with CrossFit, a lot of affiliates had stepped back from being affiliate. So I think this was getting people back into the affiliate gyms by creating a workout like this. But yeah, there's been a lot of frustrations with this one. And from my understanding, a lot of it had to do with the specifics of how they wanted the workout set up. And they gave you actually a map of how it had to be set up with measurements in between each piece of equipment, which creates a lot of problems when you wanted 8 feet between some of the equipment. And now, again, going back to our slogan of being able to be done anywhere and for everybody, this is not practical in most gyms, and a lot of people work out in their cool garage gyms and stuff, and there was a lot of frustrations with this one. So yeah, a lot of people I think are pretty unhappy.
Were you able to do a video and send it in this year? Because I had heard somewhere and then someone told me it was wrong. So I don't know which way it is, but I'd heard that, like, for example, I couldn't do it without an official judge and send in a video and be judged that way. So I don't know which way that actually was.
So yeah, it's funny because I had also heard going into this one that you had to be judged by a CrossFit affiliate judge. But then I saw today people submitting videos that were when they were done on their own.
Okay.
So I actually don't know which way that goes.
Because I think if they did went that way, and again, I'm not saying they did because it was just the way I heard it, that would be a big mistake because so many people who are big into CrossFit and big CrossFit fans work out at home gyms and and don't have a judge or whatever the case may be. And I think, like you say, this is supposed to be for everybody, but I think the way they did this year is really going to cut down on their participation. And I don't know. I hope it pays off for them. I'm a big fan of CrossFit. I am not a CrossFitter, but a fan, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't kick them in the pants.
And it's even, again, you're submitting these videos and something like wall balls, and you're trying to fit all of these things into one video. And unless you have someone who's following you around with the camera, the judging of things like wall balls with the height, and even showing the proper measurements of the wall ball targets, and the, you know, the depth of the squat on the wall balls, and the height of the ball, all these things. And if you expect, and you have hundreds of thousands of people that submit videos for the Open, so
Mhm.
if you expect that people are going to be watching all these videos, you're fooling yourself. So then people, I also heard a lot of controversy about people submitting just these absolutely insane scores.
Well, that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, it does, but I just heard this year it was like astronomical numbers.
Right. This is where Andrew Hiller makes his heyday, right? This is his time of year. It's open. He gets to critique everybody's reps and do what he does. And I enjoy watching him critique the reps because I'm all about the good stuff.
Mhm.
Um yeah, so I don't know. It is what it is. The one thing that gets me about this is, like you said, CrossFit's not our deal, but our thing is like, hybrid space, OCR. And we come down a lot on Spartan, on Hyrox, on Deka, on whoever, whatever company. We often point out their mistakes on social media, things they might be doing right, things they might be doing wrong. And a lot of times it's said, oh, why can't you have, and the hybrid, why can't you have great judging like CrossFit? Well, don't kid yourself. They suffer from the same problems, and they've been around longer and they've been doing it a long time. And I'm not condemning CrossFit because they're just saying, I'm just legitimizing that these problems are not easy to solve. So when you're an OCR person, you're like, oh, my sport is stupid. They can't fix these little things. CrossFit has this great setup. No, they don't.
Mhm.
They're screwing up just as much. They're making mistakes. They're doing all sorts of things. So just know that your sport is no more daft than any other ones,
Mhm.
especially not than CrossFit. I mean,
Yeah. As
we
long as they're trying to be better. And well, and this year too in the Open, after they make the Open announcements, then they do a head-to-head duel with two women, two men. And this year they messed up the weights on the bars of the women's barbell. Oh, sorry, that was the 30 cleans. That's what the barbell
yeah,
cleans was, the one that I missed. And they actually put the wrong weight on the bar for the women's competition. And they didn't realize it until after they had posted their scores. So mistakes happen everywhere.
yeah. So try to be a little kind. I know we critique as much as anybody, but just keep it in mind. Take it with a grain of salt. And this is something too that it clicked into my head too. Is when I thought about it, like I just said, we're not CrossFitters, we're not this, we're not that, but we're also not, despite the fact you have a Deka affiliate gym, we are not brand loyalists.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many people argue online for a long time, but even lately, oh no, I'm a Spartan person, I'm a Tough Mudder person, I'm a Hyrox person, I'm a Deka person. Let me be the first, or not the first, let me be the latest to say brand monogamy is not necessary. You do not have to be in a one race brand relationship.
Mhm.
You can play the field. It's okay. The other brand will be there when you come back. They'll wait for you. I don't
Yeah.
know why it clicked to me, but I've just seen it all the time. It's like, I'm just a Deca guy. I can't do Hyrox. Well, that's not true at all. I can love them both. That's the
Mhm.
joy of this stuff. So don't feel
Mhm.
like you have to only be with one. There was one other thing I wanted to touch on, and this frustrated me so much because I would definitely like to try one of the Spartan 3Ks. And so they have it coming in Jacksonville as a tester event. And I'm like, if they had announced it earlier, I would have planned a trip to go and go to it. And now they've decided not only they're going to have a tester, they're going to give it away for free. I'm
Yeah.
like, you bastards. Because I so would have been all over that. I would have loved to try it.
Yeah, and anyone that had paid to register was getting a refund.
That's right. That's right. And there's been a lot of, oh my God, they couldn't fill the spots. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? And I did listen actually to Matt, and Matt brought up a good point today. Is he does, and this surprised me because Matt's one to critique Spartan a lot. He said he doesn't think it has to do with anything about getting registrations. He just thinks they actually realized this is a test and we should have been putting it out for free in the first place. So let's just do what's right. So hopefully that is the case. And good on you, Matt, for you know giving them the benefit of the doubt on there.
Mhm.
So yeah. But that's all I really wanted to chat about today. I really want to get to the interview with Rylan. You got anything else before we shoot?
Nope, I don't.
All right. Well, here we go. I believe it's still Deca Fit World Record holder Rylan Schadegg. All right. So after a few tries, we finally made it happen. And I think even the first time was mine. We tried to do this like before Blue Mountain, and I think that might have been me, or I don't know. But finally get to try. Rylan Schadegg, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. And thanks for dipping into your day right before you go to Ninja Gym. I'll go, you know what, I had other things to talk about. I want to start right there. Seeing you at the Ninja Gym a lot more comparatively now, what I think to OCRWC, I mean, your conditioning throughout here has always been amazing. It's always been that, and your ability to get through the obstacles has been fine. But maybe your efficiency and the amount of time you lost on the obstacles maybe took a little bit out of you. Is this why we're at the Ninja Gym now?
100%. In the Spartan races, I think I've gotten to a point where I really don't lose much time on obstacles. Obviously, you can always be better, but you see a lot of the same ones. But I noticed, especially in the 3K, because that was my first non-Spartan race. Was OCRWC 3K, and then the 15K the following day. And just not being exposed to different types of obstacles and then having to go into them in a race because you're not allowed to practice before was difficult. And I lost quite a bit of time to Kempson, VJ, and Atkins. In fact, I came in to that first really big hill climb in like fifth or fourth, jumped all the way up to VJ and was right behind him in second. And then again through the obstacles, kind of dropped back to fourth again, and then bumped back up to third. And then Ryan Atkins passed me again, and I dropped to fourth again on some obstacles. So it was a big eye opener that the more I expose myself to and the different types of obstacles that I do, the more well versed I'm going to be overall in any race that I show up to.
And so obviously the plan, go back to OCRWC this year and give it another shot and try to take the title this time?
I think so. They haven't announced prize money yet. In last year, when all of the elites showed up, they didn't realize they had cut the prize money less than half of what it used to be because they didn't tell anybody. So if they were going to do that again, I might not, just because of travel expenses and things like that. So it really depends on how upfront they want to be about the cost. Because pretty much when you travel a lot to races, it gets really expensive. I'm sure you both understand this. So I really do like the event. I would like to go back, but I am going to try and be more selective of my races that I show up to this year, just because I don't want to get raced out. And then also I want to make sure that I'm being wise with my money, I guess, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
So speaking of that, though, I saw today a video that you posted. Are you stepping back a little bit from your full-time job and focusing more on racing this year?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So I actually am coaching full-time now and training full-time. And I really want to see how good at this I can get. So last year was my first full season in the sport. The year before that, I had about 3 months before I fractured my heel and had to take a break. And then I didn't race until 2022. And so last year was a pretty big eye opener for me that I should believe in myself a little bit more and really take this time period of my life where I have very little risk and just go for it. So I've been coaching for about 6 years now. However, I have not promoted it because I usually have coached cyclists, and then I started coaching OCR athletes last year because it's a new space. And what's interesting is you have a lot of coaches coming from the running background or some sort of endurance background, and then they start coaching hybrid athletes or OCR athletes. And the interesting thing is they usually have only a running perspective, or they that's primarily a running perspective, but the sport is so much more than that. And then you look at CrossFit coaches where they're usually coming from more of a strength background and they're adding an aerobic component to it. So what I learned through racing a lot last year is there's quite different ways of training that people are using to do OCR and hybrid. And a lot of people think you can only do one or the other. But through my background and the coaching that I've done, and then also I really love studying exercise science. I have learned that, so basically there's a base level of aerobic fitness that you can develop. And this pretty much goes for any endurance sports. The higher that base level, the more versatility you can have and the more you can sprinkle on top. So I kind of think of it as a cake. If you bake the cake first, then you can put the frosting and the sprinkles and stuff like that on top. And that can be your specific Deka build or your specific OCRWC build or your Hyrox build. And they all look a little bit different, but the aerobic component of how your body adapts to the aerobic demand of the sport is the same. And then from that base level, you can build maybe like more of, if I was going to hit a Hyrox event, I would focus more on threshold training with small strength anaerobic efforts, and then coming back down to sub threshold, recovering, going back into threshold, and then back up anaerobic, because that's what a Hyrox race is. You go a little anaerobic on the sled, and the sled, like both sleds, the push and the pull, and then you might have to go anaerobic on the wall balls and the lunges, but you want to fall back into sub threshold or threshold running. And then with Deka, it's more of a steady state threshold with anaerobic peaks, because you might actually be going anaerobic on some of the runs and then recovering on some of the stations. Like I recover usually on the rower, or I will choose to recover on the ski erg, and I can actually go sub threshold and then bump up super threshold again. And then in an OCR race, like if I was training for Mammoth, then I would be doing a lot more hill work. Whereas if I'm training for Deka or Hyrox, I'm going to be doing a lot more track work or flat running. So but it all comes back to that. How efficient is your body at burning at that baseline aerobic rate, if that makes sense?
It probably does, but I just have one question.
Yeah. What's
Does that
up?
mean you can tell me how to get better on the assault bike for the bloody Deka?
Yeah. Yeah, man. We can
That's all I
work
need, man. That's it. That's it. The rest of it is easy.
So what is your best assault bike time in Deka right now?
In Deka during an event or just fresh?
During an event.
During an event, we're probably looking at about 90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay. So what I like to do is I pick the goal number, which usually I try not to jump below 10%, 10 to 20% of what my current best is. So for instance, before this last race, I think my best assault bike time was 55 to 60 seconds during the race. But I really had never smashed it. And I don't want to smash the assault bike, because then all of your runs suffer after, because you've gone anaerobic, you're flooding your muscles with lactic acid, both your type 1 and type 2. So then everything's toasted. Like your legs feel like jelly. So if you go too anaerobic on the assault bike, it's not worth it. So basically what I practice is I actually have a workout called Death by Assault Bike. And basically what it is it's 25 cals at my race pace. And then, so I'm pooling that lactic acid in my legs and throughout my body. And then I go jump on the rower or the ski erg for 2 minutes. So it's active recovery, almost like the run after or the run prior. And then I go back to the assault bike. And then when I can no longer handle my goal race pace, workout's over. So it might take me 10 reps, might take me 12, depending on how fresh I am. But basically, if I don't hit 55 seconds on the assault bike in that workout, the workout's over. So it's like drilling it on the assault bike. So for you, I would say probably if your best is 90 seconds, go warm up and then hit 80 seconds on the assault bike, try and get 25 cals in 80 seconds.
Right.
Then go recover for 2 minutes on the ski erg or the rower, and just like easy recovery. Try and bring your heart rate down, your breathing down, and then hit the assault bike again in 80 seconds. And just keep repeating that until you can no longer do it. And then you have your benchmark, and then you can kind of improve from there. And then you can do like 12.5 calorie surges. So if you always train at the same pace, then your body will acclimate to that pace, but it's not going to get faster after that. So like training shorter durations is really useful because it teaches your body to learn how to spike higher, if that makes sense. So I do that a lot. I'll do less. Instead of doing a 55-second interval, I'll do a 20-second interval, and then I'll have a shorter recovery, like 10, 20 seconds, depending on what I'm trying to do. And then I'll hit another hard 20 seconds at the same wattage. And I'm trying to burn at least 12.5 calories, you know? So
yeah, I didn't think he was actually going to tell me.
yeah, man, I'm just here to try and make people better. I'm trying to learn. Everyone's trying to learn. So yeah,
that's awesome. And we totally have not started the way I planned to. So that's great. Yeah. So yeah, let's stick with Deka. Let's go with Deka. So we'll go back because just last weekend you were down in Austin, and yeah, you got your. So how many wins? Would this be your third win at Deka Fit, or?
I've only done 3, so it's my second win.
Second win. So your second win at Deka Fit, and yeah. So tell us about the race. Tell us how it went down there.
So it started off pretty fast. Anas, he took it off like fairly hard, and I was really happy and content to sit in, just because especially with racing so much, when you just race off the front by yourself the whole time, sometimes it's not as exciting as racing with someone. So it's really fun. He is definitely getting fitter. I felt it there. He's getting faster for sure. And we kind of went back and forth on some of the runs. I mainly sat in because he seemed happy to lead. So I just went off his pace and tried to stay controlled. And then we really started to break apart on box jumps, or the box step overs. I think the technique he was using was just a little bit slower. And I actually adopted the technique that I saw Rich and Kent use, just because I used to not take a half step between, but then the way I stepped over the box, since it's on the cement floor, it moved a lot, so it would knock me off rhythm. So now I step more central on the box, do a half step on the other side, and bounce back over. And that worked really well for me during that race. It was definitely faster, or it felt smoother, I guess. And then after that, hit the run, and he was probably maybe only 3 to 5 seconds back. And then after the med ball sit-ups, that's one station I really feel comfortable on. I think I had maybe 8 seconds after that station, and that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to try and open it up and see if I can make this race against the clock instead of against other people, and just really have fun with it. So that's what I did.
Nice. Fun. What'd you think about, and I brought this up because back at Worlds, Nick Riker probably didn't have his best day. And it looked like when he was out there in Austin that he was much more competitive, much more probably where he should have been. Do you think that he's picked it up a bit this year?
So it is early in the season, but he has put on a little bit of size, he told me, like to get ready for Nashville games, which I believe was last weekend. And he still was running incredibly well. He had a really solid closing. So the first half of the race, I think he held back quite a bit, and he was in 4th or 5th. And then he jumped up to 2nd after, I believe it was after the assault bike is when he really just hammered, and he caught Mark, he caught Anas, because Anas, I think, went a little bit too far into the red and died. And then, yeah, Nick just pounced, and he paced it really well, had a solid race. He's definitely looking very strong. So
just a guy always like, Nick's a great guy. I like talking about Nick, and he doesn't get a lot of credit. And I hope he does well this year.
Yeah, he's a baller. I love that guy.
Um, so I wanted to go back to Worlds because we never got a chance to talk to you about Worlds, and Worlds was pretty, I thought pretty epic out there. Um, Going into Worlds, what was your mindset? Because I mean, a lot of the talk was Rylan and Kent, Rylan and Kent. How was your feeling going in there?
I felt uh are we talking the week leading up to the race or the day
Sure,
of the
sure, anything,
race?
whatever, however you want to play it.
Uh Farther out from the race, I felt really confident, and I I try and maintain a level of confidence before events. Like I always try and believe that I can win or I can do well. And my goal is always to get the best out of myself. And I did that weekend. That was the best that I had. And I definitely paced the first half of that race how I planned to pace the whole thing. But I just blew up, fell apart, did not, didn't have it. And I was more worried about Kent than I was about Rich Ryan. And then Rich Ryan just came, and I remember on the farmer's carry, I knew he was going to pass me because he had been on my tail. He had caught up to me, and I was dying. And it was pretty clear he was not. And I was pretty sure as soon as I set the weights down and he got around me that it was going to be very difficult to hang on. And he just had me after that. I I had been sick about a week before that, and or a couple days before that, and I really I started to really struggle with. I would, for instance, I came back from Trifecta World Champs, and the day I got back, I got my van at the airport, drove it to the fire station. I worked for 72 hours, and then I drove it back to the airport and flew out to the next event. And I did that for 7 out of 8 weekends, up until Abu Dhabi and Hyrox LA. And so I only, between October and December, Hyrox LA, I actually only slept about 10 to 15 nights at my house total. And inside of October and November themselves, I only, if we're not including December, I only slept there 8 nights total, and it was one night at a time before I would go back into work the next morning. And so I started to really get little colds and things like that and struggle. But me being me, I'm like, I'm going to power through. I am going to show up to the next event. I'm going to crush it. I believe in myself. Like that's the attitude that I want to have showing up to every race. But the lifestyle that I chose definitely started to affect my sleep cycle a lot, because I'd be up at night at work and then I'd be going to a different time zone, and that did start to make it difficult. But I felt fine the day before Deka Worlds, and after I got a little sick again, on my way to, I almost didn't go to Abu Dhabi because I got a bad fever, and after Deka Worlds and Thanksgiving, and I was considering not going, but then I got my flight postponed to the next day, and I decided to just take some Dayquil and show up anyways. And I'm glad I went, but also it was another big shift in time zone, another 12-hour difference. And then I came back and I worked another 72 hours, and then I went back and did Hyrox LA. And again, Hyrox LA felt like a couple days before I was like, I'm sick, maybe I won't go. No, I've already signed up, I'm gonna go anyways. And then it's difficult to keep doing that to your body. And so in a way, like I was always confident that things were going to go well at every race I showed up to. But that's a big reason I decided to take a step back from my full-time job and focus more on racing, because that is something that I have to do now, and it won't be there in 15 years from now. But if I wanted to do firefighting again, that is something that will always be there. So that's a big reason I had to make the switch, is because the last 3 months of last year taught me a lot about what I can handle. And even if I show up really confident to a race, like treating my body in a respectful way prior to that does pay off, if that makes sense.
100%. Sorry. Sorry, Beth, I thought you had something there. Obviously, yeah, that all contributed, because I know a lot of racers, especially like yourself. You're a humble guy. You're not a bragger. You're not, like that. And sometimes it's hard to even say stuff like this, like, oh, I was sick or that, because you don't want to make excuses. And I just want to, these are not excuses. This is a reality of what it's like when you're trying to put that much effort in that many days in a row, that kind of weeks in a row. The fact that you hung on as long as you did was amazing. And I remember going into some of these events and doing all the different pick'em contests and whatever, and saying, no, Rylan's absolutely amazing, but he's doing all this stuff and eventually it has to catch up to him. And I just like, to hear you taking a step back is actually kind of scary, as to if you're racing, and I hesitate to call it this way, but if you're racing a smarter schedule this year, it puts that ceiling up another notch as to where you can go. And everybody else should be really worried.
The main thing this year is I want to focus on being the best version of myself, and that includes in sport, and being more honest with myself, because for instance, I will not say that I would have won Deka Worlds. I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to say I would have won any event that I showed up to, because the fact is every choice that I made was my choice on the type of job that I had, the travel that I did, the races I showed up to, the foods I ate, things like that. And to be honest, for most of the races, I felt fine, but you can only cram so much quality work in when you're not getting enough sleep, or you're constantly traveling, or you're getting up a lot at night at work and things like that. So there is a threshold of like what my body can handle, and I started to find that. And so it was either adjust my race schedule or adjust the type of work or amount of work that I'm doing, essentially. And I don't even know if it was in the cards for me to win last year of any of the events that I showed up to. Because I'm very new to the sport. So I realized that things take time, and that's okay. Like, it's a 5-year goal for me to continue to keep increasing my aerobic capacity, to continue building my lactate threshold, and also to maybe potentially bump up my VO2 max a bit more, but I'm most likely genetically I'm maxed out on that. So big thing is aerobic threshold and lactate threshold for me is if I can keep improving those over the next 5 to 10 years. And just because it gives me more ability to go play in the mountains, it gives me more ability to go race more events. And so that's more of what I'm focused on long term. And showing up to a lot of championship events last year was 100% my decision, and everybody that beat me definitely deserved it 100%. So
You mentioned Hyrox LA, and there was a lot of anticipation about your debut at Hyrox. And I personally think you had a good debut. I think it was you had a solid debut. You had been coming off all of these races. So really, you put in a good effort. I don't think you happen to have a particularly fast course, as is exampled by both Rich and Ryan Kent's time, and you were right there with them. We all know Rich Ryan's feelings on how the system has played out for him. And there was a lot of mention, of course, where you were lumped in the same category as someone who probably should have just been in the most recent US championships. How are you feeling about Hyrox in general? And are you going to go back? What's the game plan there?
So first off, Hyrox does put on a great event. It's a good atmosphere. They've really done a good job creating an event where you feel like you're getting something out of it that is more than just the race. Like it's hyped up, it's very sorry, can you guys hear that in the background? I'm gonna shut my door really quick.
Okay. No
Sorry,
problem.
my bad. You can cut this out of the audio if you need to.
Mid-interview walks are the best.
Okay, so Hyrox, they put on a great event. They do a great job. However, I'm very particular with time because I'm a busy guy. I have a lot going on. A lot of people do, but I value my time a lot. And it was frustrating, especially because of the time I got in LA that was with a 1-minute penalty because I made a mistake. I went the wrong way. My judge yelled at me and they pointed me the right direction. So I backtracked on the course, went the correct way, and then continued on. So I didn't cut the course at all, nothing. I just went the incorrect way, backtracked, added to my time, and then kept going. And at the end of the race, I found out because of that, I received a 1-minute penalty. And what's frustrating about Hyrox is there were several women that did the same thing. And then also another guy, they missed one of his laps and he even laps his watch every time. And for some reason, the computer didn't pick up his lap. And even though he showed them his watch data and everything, they were like, no, you get a 5-minute penalty. But like the women who went the wrong way, the same way I did, the exact same way, they either got a 15-second penalty or they didn't get a penalty at all because I don't really know why. So it seems like it's
An
inconsistency.
inconsistency.
There's an inconsistency in the penalties that are given and then also the time of the penalty. And like my judge even called someone in Germany, she said, like one of the head dudes, and said, hey, like this guy, he went the wrong way, but then he backtracked, so he didn't cut the course at all. It wasn't an advantage. He actually gave himself a disadvantage. We should remove his penalty. And the guy said, no, like we're leaving the penalty. And I was cool with that because I get it. Rules are rules. But then I was told, okay, we're going to wait and see if you get the roll down for North American champs. And I kid you not, it was 3 weeks out from the event. I get an email and it's, hey, so we only have 13 guys right now, but we're actually not going to give you a spot because you're outside the top 30. And we just decided that if you're outside the top 30, you're not allowed to go. And I was like, well, I've literally been training for this for at least a month now, specifically adding more weight to things. Like Hyrox and Deka are quite a bit different. And I was prepared to actually give it a proper shot. And then 3 weeks out from the event for them to say, like, even if there was a spot, you don't get to go. That was pretty frustrating to me. And Rich got the same email. And then to also find out that if that 1-minute penalty wouldn't have been there, I would have been inside that top 30 most likely to go. That was also frustrating because it was a combination. So it felt disrespectful of to tell me like there was a chance and then them tell me later on, hey, we just made this new rule. You're not in the top 30. You're not allowed to go. And then that's not even talking about like course differences and things like that. Everyone talks about that already, so I don't really need to touch on that. But I felt disrespected. So for me, I had already committed to going to Hyrox Houston, so I'll be there this weekend. However, it has not been my focus anymore because just like in relationships or with people in my life or other events, I have a lot going on, so I like to go where I'm wanted. So for instance, if Deka makes a priority to standardize the courses to make me feel like they want me to be there, same with like OCRWC or Spartan or whatever, the better a brand treats me, the more I am going to show up to their events if they are supporting the athletes that do them. if they just make me feel like another number, or other people, like I see them treating other people in a disrespectful way, then it is harder for me to get behind that brand. And that's not what I'm saying Hyrox is doing, but they did make me feel that way in my case. And so I'm prioritizing in the way that I prepare for the rest of my year. I'm definitely prioritizing a lot more Deka specific and OCR specific work. And Hyrox is just going to be for fun whenever I want to show up and do one. So I'll be at Houston. I'll have a good time because I'm a sucker for racing and I want to race regardless. But it's not really the focus that I intended it for it to be a few months ago.
And I think that is. Oh, no, you're okay, Beth. Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead.
I think that is really sad and really disappointing and a big loss for Hyrox. And I get it. Like I think we both understand that in that situation, and I didn't even know part of that. What you say there that really catches me is that they said, well, hopefully you can get it on the roll down. But at that point, they knew you were not in the top 30. And then to all of a sudden say that they put in that they limited the top 30. That's the part that really gets me. Because if that top 30 thing was a rule from day one, as daft a rule as it would have been, if it was there from the beginning, then I would have to respect them for sticking to it. But to make that rule later, or to insinuate that it wasn't there and then to initiate it, I just it's a black mark. And and like I said, it's disappointing from a fan's perspective of Hyrox and of yours that we're not going to see a full out Rylan Schadegg at some Hyrox events. But hopefully you go down to Houston and you smash it and you end up in that world championship race anyway. And then maybe some things will change. And, I'd like to see that. Moving along. You mentioned Spartan. So Spartan did a big detour from the Elite Series being beasts predominantly in supers, and now to the new 3K format, which is still kind of yet to be tested. Is that something that you're jumping in on?
Yes, I really like the idea of the 3K format. The only thing that I personally don't like about it is it's only a 1 kilometer qualifying course. So if you just think about it from an athlete perspective, an athlete that will do well at I think the 1 kilometer course in Abu Dhabi, I want to say it took me
it was like sub 6. I thought it was sub 6, somewhere around there.
It was something fairly fast for the obstacles, and with I think it had a 1.5 or 2 minute sandbag carry. It wasn't like a 1K on a track, obviously, but it was below that 10-minute mark. And when you add 2 more laps on top of that in the actual championship race, it's going to change pacing a ton, because it's literally triple the race of what the qualifying heat was. So the only thing that I could see happening is maybe the better endurance athletes that are a little less explosive, they might not get into that final heat off the bat, just because they have such a big aerobic engine, which is more important to win the 3K. But for the 1K, although it's still an endurance effort, if it's close to 5 minutes, the athlete that can go for 20 minutes in the 3K or 5 minutes in the qualifying event, it's going to be a different athlete sometimes. So that could factor in, but I'm going to have fun regardless. Like, I am really trying to work on obstacle proficiency, because that's going to be more important in the 3K. And then I love being in the mountains. So if there are beasts that are going to be more focused on, whether at the same weekend of a 3K or at a different weekend or supers, I am very open to participating in those, as well as the 3K and the 15K at OCRWC, because I love longer events. I really love being, if it's in the mountains, I'm pretty much in. If it's racing, I'm pretty much in. Well, I'm not going to lie. I just love racing. So I'm just gonna race.
So you're one of the few, and we didn't really get to see that 1K course in Abu Dhabi. How is that course laid out? Like, I mean, question where the, like, I mean, flooding questions. Were the laser guns in it? How many obstacles were there? And you said a minute and a half carry. Like, that's a pretty long carry for that short of a race. And how was it? Like, how heavy a carry was it?
So it was the regular Spartan disc
I think
sandbag,
60 pounds, I think.
60 pounds. It wasn't bad. I've heard that they will be double sandbag carries in the 3K. That's just what I've heard, and I really hope it's true because the more weight, the better, honestly. And I'm actually really stoked that they'll be putting a carry in every event, it sounds like, because for me, that's good. I love running with weight. It's what I do. It's very conducive to the body structure I have, and then also the training that I have done for years leading up to this. So it just works out really well for me. I know it's personal preference, but to have a 1.5 to 2 minute carry in each lap in a lap that only takes 6 minutes, like that's pretty awesome for me. So I'm excited about that. It forces the race to slow down, or someone makes an attack on the carry. So I think the more condensed the obstacles and also the more the carries happen, it makes the runners surge ahead on the run because they need to get ahead before they get to the obstacle or the carry. And then the people who are good at obstacles or carries, they're going to count on being able to bring them back. And I think that causes more lead changes, which is more viewer friendly because then it's exciting. It's like, oh, okay, VJ's going to pass Ryan Atkins on this obstacle because he does it faster, and then Rylan's going to try and pass on the carry, or he's going to try and pass on the A-frame cargo net or whatever it is. Like that part really excites me a lot. So I'm actually really excited about that. And then the laser pistols, I prefer them over the spear throw just because of the reliability. For instance, in Greece, the targets were the hay bale with saran wrap, and I had never seen that type of target before. So it was shaped a little different, but the big thing was you almost had to throw it a different way so that it wouldn't, if you threw it too hard, it might hit the wooden or metal plate in the back and bounce out. If you didn't throw it hard enough, it definitely did not stick as hard as well as the foam. And then in Mexico, Atkins had a problem. I watched it. Like he threw it and it hit in between the foam gaps, and there's probably the metal plate that holds them in the back, and it just like bounced out. And I think with the laser pistols, that will help take that away, as well as hopefully incorporate OCR into the Olympics better if that's going to be part of the pentathlon. So I think it's not a bad move. And as long as the pistols are reliable, I think it's not a bad idea. So I'm open to it.
You might be one of the first people that said that, and it's a solid point. The one thing I do, and I do like about the laser pistol thing is it's its own built-in penalty. And that, it's like, what do you have, like 30 or 60 seconds to hit the target a certain amount of times. And if you do it in 3 seconds, you're gone. And if it takes you the whole time, then that's your built-in penalty already. So that part I like about it. I hope they're reliable too. We made a lot of jokes about it before, but in reality, the spear's goofy too. So who knows? I'm up for giving it a go and seeing how it works and trying not to judge beforehand. But
I liked what I thought they were gonna do with the spear when I saw it I showed up to the Spartan race the day after Hyrox LA. And a buddy was running, so I ended up filming him and just having a good time. And they had the circle with no hay behind it or nothing to stick it into. You basically just had to throw this blunt spear through the circle, and that's what counted. And it took the sticking factor out of it, all of that. It was just if your spear went through the circle, you were good. And that's how I thought they were going to do it. And then I saw the SoCal race footage earlier, and it looks like it's a circle, but then you still have to stick it in something behind the circle. And I love throwing spears because it makes me feel like a man. Like it's cool. Like the cool factor is there. It's part of what Spartan has differentiated itself from other brands. It's like we do the spear throw, and I think it's cool. But I thought they were going to make it a little bit more standardized, and then they went ahead and threw another hay bale thing behind it, and I was like, well, now you got to throw it in the circle and you got to stick it in the hay bale. I think it's going to be harder, but maybe I'll just practice more, and that should be solve my issue, hopefully.
From what I heard, there was a lot of failures on that spear throw at that race, like a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Normally it's like through the open and stuff you see a lot, and then especially with the elite man, you might see one or two here or there. But I heard it was very high rate, which is cool. I'm all right with that. And with the penalty loops, it's not like the end of the world now if you miss it, right? You can run your way back in.
Yeah. I do like the penalty loops just because watching someone do burpees is not as fun as watching somebody try and book a penalty loop to try and hurry up and keep their spot while someone else is doing the spear throw. Because 30 burpees, there's kind of a limit on how fast you can do that. And obviously, there's a limit on how fast you can do a penalty loop, but it's really cool to watch someone sprint versus watch someone die on the burpee pit and then lose their soul. But I don't know. That's just me.
No, I think we're both game with the penalty loops over the burpees, despite the fact, Bethany, go ahead.
Well, I like burpees, but I don't like having to do them as a penalty. But it also, I think the biggest thing with the penalty loops, though, is the judges aren't having to go back and count the burpees. So you know who crosses the finish line first is the eventual winner. So again, with the penalty situation, like you were talking with Hyrox, like sometimes you'd finish races and then someone would get X amount of seconds added onto the race from burpee penalties. So it just eliminates that whole situation also.
I think that has happened. That happened to me in Utah this last year. Josh Reed and I had a sprint to the line at Utah, and I had done burpees for one of the obstacles. I think it was the multi-rig. I just was not with it and failed the multi-rig, and I think I did 29 burpees instead of 30 because it didn't count right. And after the race they bumped me down a spot, and it was because I didn't count my burpees right. And I was like, I mean, to me, when you're seeing red and you're kind of dizzy and you're out of it at the end of a race, it's easy for me to miscount, I'll be honest. So I'm sure I did the wrong number of burpees, and it is kind of a bummer when you're like, oh, I got fifth or whatever, and then you get bumped down a spot and you're like, oh, I should have done one more burpee and then I would have been fine. But or I could just count better. So
I don't know, man. You think about it at the end of a Deka, how good are we at counting those 20 ram burpees at the end of Deka? Because I just go when the judge says go.
I am so glad that they have judges there being like, all right, 1, 2, 3. Because if I had to think about it, I'd have to focus on it. And it's right when I'm seeing red, purple, like I'm about to pass out, depending on how hard the race was. And yeah, I'm definitely grateful they have judges counting for you.
That one, mind you, I actually find it worse on the farmer's carry. That's where I completely lose count. The farmer's carry and the tank. I have no idea how many I'm on. I'm like, what is this 1, 9, 7? I have no freaking idea.
Yep. I asked the judge on the farmer's carry. It was on the Deka Fit. It's just the course looped, which is awesome. But on the sled, this last time I was on rep 4, and I was like, is that 5 or is that 4? Do I have one more? He's like, no, you got one more. So I did another one. And I was glad that he said something because I wasn't sure anymore because I'd completely lost count.
All right. So we know this year Deka is a high priority for you. I assume we'll see you in Worlds at Deka. The Spartan 3K, we're going to partake in that. From a selfish perspective, will we see you back in Canada for this year?
I hope so. I really hope so. There's is it Mont Tremblant?
Mount Tremblant. Yeah.
Tremblant. I think that's one of the 3K races, correct?
Yes.
And there's also a sky race the next weekend.
Ooh.
In Canada.
The one in Meet the Minotaur?
Yes. And sky
Oh,
racing is what I'm really looking forward to. Like, so at least for I say I'm going to be pickier about my weekends, but really I'm just going to be pickier about the travel surrounding my weekends, and then I won't be working 72 48 hours between the weekends, so that should help. But I'm totally going to be doing quite a bit of sky racing and then Deka in OCR, or the main focuses for this year. So I might do a Hyrox or two, but honestly, after May, Hyrox is not going to be on the agenda for me anyways. So yeah, basically as soon as the mountains open up, it's going to be full on mountain season for me. And besides the Spartan 3Ks, I want to be in the mountains. That's kind of the goal. So there's a sky race up there. So I really do want to make a trip to Canada. And yeah, I'm also going to be up doing a Deka class at the end of April in Calgary as well.
Oh, Fitcore. That's a great gym.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
really good people there. Really good people. And it's a good ninja gym too, so you can get your practice in while you're up there.
I'm so excited to be up there. I love Canada. I can't believe I waited until last year to show up. It was phenomenal.
Well, yeah. Beautiful sunrises on Blue Mountain, right?
Yes, that was incredible. I was walking and turning around. We were power hiking. It was a steep uphill, so I just kind of turned around, started walking sideways. It was so beautiful. It was incredible. And then at Kelowna, the course there and just going all through BC was so amazing. And I rode my motorcycle there, so I was just ripping around the canyons with a tent and actually just a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag. I didn't bring a tent, I should have. But the mosquitoes up there are way worse than I thought they would be. I was thinking high mountain town, there's not going to be mosquitoes. I show up, and 2 nights before the race, I hardly got any sleep because I was sleeping on the ground with no mosquito net, and they're flying into my ears and everything. I couldn't sleep. It's not fun.
If you ever go back there again, try to do the Sea to Sky Highway from Vancouver up to Whistler on the bike.
Okay.
I did that. I did that one time when I was out there for work. I had one day off and rented a bike and went to the Sea to Sky Highway, and you'll go up to it. It's gorgeous. Just a beautiful, beautiful trip.
Oh,
And yeah, let me put a pitch in for Tremblant. You've been to Blue, you raced there. Picture Blue Mountain on a bit of steroids.
oh, that sounds very nice.
It is very nice. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's a great venue. So
Sweet.
I've been look out. Beth, you got anything else for Rylan?
No, I don't. But thank you so much, Rylan, for coming on. We're really excited to see what you do with your season, and all the best this weekend at your Hyrox.
Thank you. I'll try and make you guys proud.